Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to take a look at a ship that is actually quite interesting. Now at first the Crusader Genesis was a bit of a curveball after I initially discovered it. Originally I thought it's just a passenger ship for the NPC missions. We don't really know too much about how that's going to work. And then I started doing a bit more digging. And digging I certainly had to do because this is a very, very old concept ship. So some of it, almost certainly, that I'm going to show to you today is going to change. I think a lot is going to change with this ship. But let's talk about my initial thoughts and impressions about the Genesis. Why I think it's actually going to be really cool. Let's talk about the looks first, shall we? So aesthetically then, Crusader Genesis, a passenger spaceship for NPC crew, from getting players and NPCs from one system to the other, drawing you some revenue. It's a nice gameplay loop. It has tons of potential. There's a market for this sort of thing. I think if CIG nail this particular ship, it could draw in new players. But let's start with the looks. Aesthetically then, so it is a Crusader ship, and my first thought that comes to mind regarding the looks of this ship is it's too misky. Okay, now misky is a word I would choose to describe a ship that looks anything like a misc, and it looks very, very misky. I think when CIG get round to designing and building this ship, I do think it's going to have a facelift. What do I mean by that? I think the cockpit area of the ship is going to be brought more in line with what Crusader make today, as in not the verse timestamp, as in the ships we have in game today. I think the Genesis front needs to be a bit more Hercules orientated. I think it will have a facelift. Everything else I think is really cool. It kind of reminds me of 1950s, 60s passenger aircraft, right? That sleek sort of, even the color scheme sort of matches that in my mind's eye. So it's very unique in that sense. I like the look of it. I just think that it's got a bit of an identity crisis at the moment, and I'm looking to see what possible changes will happen to this ship in the future. Now, it looks awesome, and it has a few tricks up its sleeve, which I was completely unaware of. So, for a start, it's modular, which is pretty cool. And also, the possibility and potential of other variants of the Genesis is also a thing. Now, this is a very, very old concept ship, and yeah, it could take some time before we get to see this, like with everything else. But aesthetically, I think it's good. I think it's hitting the nail on the head on what it's like trying to be as a passenger aircraft, forward stroke spacecraft. I think that much is obvious, but it's interesting, right? Because it's different strokes for different folks. So I'm kind of intrigued as to what you think about the Crusader Genesis. I mean, some people are going to love the original way it looks. I don't see SIG sticking with, especially the nose. I think the nose and the face will get changed. But I'm interested to know what you guys think. I'm generally interested in what you think about the look of the ship, because it's kind of unique, right? So those are my sort of theories on the facelift of the ship and how it looks aesthetically. Now, as I said, I originally thought it was just a passenger plane for the NPC crew missions, and I wasn't really into, well, I've got a Origin 600i. Who's going to turn that down if they want to lift somewhere? I thought, well, I don't really need a dedicated NPC crew machine, right? There's the E1 Spirit, there's the Constellation Phoenix, there's the 600i Touring, of course, the 890 Jump. Just ships that offer it slightly better, That was my initial thought. And then what turned that on its head was, after doing my research and looking into it a bit more and going through all the Q&A, which, by the way, will be linked in the description below the like button, along with the brochure, also in the description below the like button. So I thought, well, I don't need I'm not interested in it. Well, that quickly changed because the ship has other variations. It has the potential to have different companies owning and running one. There's all kinds of manner of things you could do with a Genesis. It's a very flexible ship, and if I had to compare its flexibility to any other ship in the game, I would probably say it seems to want to come across as almost as flexible as the Caterpillar will be when that ship eventually gets its modules. So, not just a passenger ship. Now, in terms of how NPC crew missions are going to work, we don't have much information, but the premise is you will essentially shuttle NPCs and other players from one system to another in a Genesis of your type, i.e. there's a standard 44 passenger variant, I believe, and then there's a luxury variant, which obviously you would charge a bit more premium for those people that want that sort of premium ticket but don't want to spend a fortune on an 890 jump, for example. We've also got the Spirit E1, which is yet to come into the game, which is going to do the same thing, but that would be more for VIPs and executives going from maybe one side of the system to another, not necessarily system to system travel. So there are options and flexibility available to this ship, which is interesting because, like I said, I just thought you were going to board this ship, fly it, operate it, and have your flight crew attend to the NPCs. So you'd have essentially, I think it's 8-man crew off the top of my head, 8-man crew. So let's say 2 pilots and 6 NPC flight attendants attending to NPCs and players, right? Which is kind of cool, I guess, in a weird sort of warped way. It's quite interesting. So passenger ship, first and foremost, with 2, maybe 3 variants of passenger ship. I think it's 2. That's kind of cool. So there's going to be a standard one, like a standard coach variant of Genesis, followed by a luxury variant of Genesis. And here you can see they've even gone to the lengths of including the escape pod operations, what to do in oxygen loss, which is obviously very important because, you know, breathing is also quite important. And then we have the basic crash info stuff, and, you know, they really have sort of made it very commercial, the Genesis, and how it's going to operate, which is kind of cool. Now, in terms of like the boarding and delivering people to the other side of the systems and the verses, etc., that is also where it gets quite interesting. Like, how is that going to work? Now, if you look around the spaceports, there are dedicated terminals for these kind of ships. I imagine you'd buy a ticket, as you can see here, or it would probably be something digital, I imagine, that would show up on your Mobiglass and pick a point of where you are and then obviously travel to where you want to go. It will be an interesting game loop, and I also think with the right mindset that CIG could actually draw in a lot of players from other games. What do I mean by that? Well, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 is coming, and I think the Genesis, with a few tweaks and a few more systems, of course, could possibly lure players who like that sort of gameplay. There's a lot of people that do. Space trucking is very popular. This is space trucking, but with people. Right, let's move on a little bit.
Well, folks, little bit of bad news. It seems that one of the jumps on our way to Crusader is a little bit backed up. Probably all that traffic from people looking to buy themselves one of these here new Genesis Starliners. In the meanwhile, we here in the cockpit are working with the Meridian Transit Flight Tower to see if we can't get ourselves through a secondary jump to Stanton, and maybe manage to get you all into Orison a little bit closer to schedule. I'll keep you updated as I find out more.
Okay, so let's talk about this in a bit more depth then. Where do I see this ship fitting in for people? Well, space trucking, as I said, is very popular. It's very relaxing. People like that side of gameplay. People also like flight sims and simulators in general. I'm one of them. Big fan of DCS. Have never tried Microsoft Simulator, but I know it's very popular. Games like Euro Truck Simulator, very popular. there is a lot of potential here with this ship. I would like to see some pilot licenses dished out. I think that'd be really good, that you could earn reputation for, because I believe the ship will be operated by different companies, so a licensing system for the pilots would be really good. Also, those sim players would like, for me personally, a bit more control of the ship. It'd be cool if some of the airports, spaceports that we have in-game had like a dedicated runway for passenger transport, for example, where the player has to manually land it. You know, let's get rid of some of the constant vertical ups and downs for takeoff and landing. Let's actually have a rolling landing. Let's give this ship some wheels, for example, and have the pilot control it through solar storms, high winds, aggressive weather, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, being in the future, there could be great potential for technology put into the ship regarding piloting a passenger ship. You know, maybe you could have built-in pilot helmets that had night vision and updated HUD and waypoints, jump points, and all that kind of cool stuff in a like an pilot monocle, things of that nature. There's a lot of potential that SIG could potentially tap into to sort of lure those simmers in. I think the Genesis would be a good starting point, but I really like the idea of having full manual control, especially in atmosphere, with the flight control surfaces reacting how they should, and manually trying to land while the NPCs and players that you've taken on board are screaming their heads off because it's extremely turbulent. That sounds cool. I have no doubt that with a few tweaks and iterations here and there, I think the Genesis could be a great experience for those kind of players. I think there's a lot to look forward to with this ship. Unfortunately, it's been some time since there's been an update on the ship, and I can only imagine it's going to be a long time before we find out any more information on it. I think we're waiting for a few more systems before we begin seeing ships of this nature come into play, right? I think there's a lot going for it. I do think the facelift will happen to bring it a bit more Crusader-y. I hope they keep the rest of the ship because it looks awesome. Has that classic 1950s, 60s commercial passenger look, which I think is fantastic. But there are other options on the table for this ship and how you may wish to use one in the future, because it is not just a one-trick pony of being a passenger ship. There is more to this ship, and the more digging I did, the more intrigued I became, and there's a particular potential use for this ship that really opened up my imagination a little bit. So let's dive into that and start talking about some of the other variations and what could arrive for this particular ship.
Hungry? Why not treat yourself to an authentic taste of Earth? With dozens of restaurants to choose from, the Grand Atrium has dining options from the familiar to the far out.
Okay, so what we have here is a image of all the companies that could potentially run a Crusader Genesis. So we have different companies, different variations. We have Covalex, for example, and that is a reputation system we already have in game now. And this is kind of where I was going with the pilot licenses. The more you grind a particular company, maybe they give you longer distances to travel with your passengers on board. The further you go to and fro. I'm a poet and didn't even realise I was one. The more money you make, right? So the longer the distance, the more income you get from taking those. And you only get that from grinding out the licenses. So that's a cool thing that could happen for the Genesis and pilot licensing system. I think that's a pretty solid idea. Obviously, they could work on that and tweak it. But I think that would be really interesting. That would also bring simmers in. Let's talk about the variants then. So transit companies use several different configurations for the Genesis Starliner, usually classified as a luxury, mid-range and essential bare bones because every Starliner is significantly modular. There is no one standard example of each. More complex models typically carry fewer passengers, but with the additional amenities, lounges, food options, personal quarters. The essential model focuses on more bulk cargo and less on crew and passenger comfort. The model available in the concept sale is the 40-person mid-range class. So we know there's a standard variant with 44 or 40 passengers, so that's kind of your mid-range travelling experience, I guess. Private individuals have also been known to purchase the Starliner for their own use, most frequently outfitted with yacht style with individual cabins. The frame is frequently used by professional racing teams who modify the interior to store and repair small racing ships like the M50 and their support equipment. So a racing hauling equipment variant is also pretty cool. The United Empire of Earth military also modifies the standard Genesis spec frame for a number of different roles, including troop transport. Now that's very interesting. Patrol Hunter Killer, also very interesting, and SWAX. Platform referred to informally as the Star Lifter, Star Hunter and Star Seeker, and even as an advanced aerospace prototype testbed. Imperator 1, a highly customized Genesis Starliner with added security and luxury features, is used to ferry the sitting Imperator when they travel off-world. That's interesting. Now that little paragraph there really got me my theory craft imagination juice going. The AWACS, Space Wax system. So what is a Space Wax or AWACS system? And for that, we need to quickly jump to one of my favourite games that I never have time to play, because I'm always on Star Citizen or making videos. So let's then take a look at that. So this is is it an A3 or an E3? It's an AWACS, and the point of an AWACS is an airborne warning and control system, and it has a ridiculous radar dish that rotates on top of it. And what this does is it allows this particular aircraft to effectively be the eyes and ears of a combat group that's airborne in a battle. Situational awareness is king, along with logistics, right? Why this is interesting is I would love for the Genesis to be a variant of an AWACS, so a Space Wax, using its massive scanning potential. Now I believe roughly, I think it's classified, but an AWACS of today will have a range of around 300 nautical miles, somewhere around there, which is a ridiculous scanning distance. And that's important for us as space simmers, because space apparently is quite big. I don't know if you knew that, but now you know. So I would love a Genesis to be outfitted with some sort of scanning capability, such as an AWACS, as we've just seen. So how might this unfold? Well, I went to this Star Jump Fleet Viewer, which is amazing. He's also got an amazing channel, so go see him. Incredibly talented guy. So here's my scenario. This is our random fleet. I've put the Polaris in there because there's a lot of people gushing over this ship at the moment. But let's just pretend this is our fleet. It's not my actual fleet, but we're just going to use this as an example. So we have the Genesis here, but we have it in its Space Wax format. Now, why might this be useful to your fleet, especially large orgs, medium orgs, and alike? Okay, maybe small orgs, depends on numbers really, because it really are playing a numbers game here. This is where it gets interesting for me personally. Okay, so we've got our fleet, they're flying in formation. The Genesis is out front in its Space Wax format, and this gives you a huge advantage. Now, I imagine if they do build this, and I hope they do, that this would be amazing for your fleet, because it is a very competent early warning system. Now, this is all obviously pure speculation, theory craft, and conjecture, okay? So just play along. Having a Genesis out the front of your fleet in its AWACS format, scanning the deep vastness of space, is going to give you a tremendous advantage when it comes to threat detection. I think if they don't do this, they'll be missing a beat. Okay, now obviously stealth ships are not going to get picked up by this, but how would you counter such a powerful spacecraft with its ridiculous scanning range, etc.? Well, I thought about this, and it opens up some avenues for another ship design which I don't think anyone else has thought of. Counter electronic warfare ship. I don't think I've seen anyone mention it. I don't think anyone's thought of that kind of spaceship, not that I'm aware of, but I would love to see an electronic countermeasures ship to counter the Genesis as well, and it gives us a whole new line of combat vessel, and it would be Aegis that had to make it, obviously. So, you would have an advantage. You'd be able to get your Kraken, your Idris to deploy its hangars, and get your Polaris to deploy its torpedoes on target before those threats have arrived. That's the power of the Genesis in its AWACS format. Where the Nautilus comes into play, because I also think this would pair up really well with the Nautilus, is if you detected threats, not only would you have whatever combat vessels you have in your fleet to prepare for battle, the Nautilus would then quickly find a direction, give them a heading or bearing, space bearing, whatever it might be. You could deploy the Nautilus, it lays out all of its mines, you turn your ships to face the threat, enter fleet battle. Just food for thought. That's what kind of really picked up my interest with the Genesis in an AWACS form. I think it's brilliant. If they do that, I think fleets would be amazing. You could counter it with stealth, and of course, if they do design an electronic countermeasure warfare ship, that'd be so cool as well. So just food for thought, pure speculation, but that's why I'm interested in the Genesis. Maybe I won't be able to have one because I'm predominantly solo, but I think for orcs, having an AWACS and stealth penetrating the scanning range and radars and stuff would be certainly very, very cool. Okay, that was my idea. Let's move on.
This is a reminder that the UEE has issued a Level 2 travel warning to all citizens journeying to the Hades system. Please check the spectrum for more information on this and all other travel warnings.
Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to look at the ship internally. Now, please bear in mind, it's a very old concept video, over 9 years old, and there was a horrible sound in the back which I had to isolate the voices of the devs. So I'm going to pass you to the devs. They're going to explain it. At the time this video was made was like 9 years ago, and then I'll come back and throw my thoughts into it. So I'll hand you over to CIG.
Not much happening. It's the mixed version that's actually going to be on sale. So we have like luxury seating, we have luxury sleep pods, we have the seats, we have a lounge for them, and then we have like economy seats. So like if you look at the economy sleeps, like, you know, these little pods and stuff for people to go through, and then like the luxury ones, you see like they have a little bit more space.
Yeah.
So this ship was actually interesting in that it challenged a lot of our designs. So I'm gonna move over to another iteration now that's a little bit more complete than that one. So this one right here is one of the other ones. As you see, the seating has changed. Some bathrooms were added. The cockpit's a little bit more situated out. But again, we were looking at it, we're like, this doesn't really have what we need. I mean, and then like we started thinking about the different features that were going into the ship itself. For instance, we didn't think about like safety features. We didn't think about how long it would travel to it'd take to travel from like one planet to another. There's just so many questions that we just didn't have answered. So we've been working with the guys in Austin because they've been ones that have taken over the PU and stuff. We've been taking over the ships and doing ship work here. So we've been kind of collaborating.
Yeah,
too.
design elements and stuff.
Yeah, it's actually really, really been interesting on a lot of the different things. So again, like this one right here has a bunch of different type seats, but then again, what's the gameplay there?
Yeah,
and also the space, like the spacing wasn't really what we needed. So going through like the FPS standards for like make sure spacing is there, level design to make sure all of our things are consistent, then like other designs started coming across. So like we have this one here, which again, this is more of the same, but more the spacing. So as you see here, like there's more space for the legs, there's more space for people to run around and jump around, but still wasn't really enough. So I had to make another version. And I was like, yeah, it was like so many versions, dude. It's crazy.
I like to say it's an iterative process, right?
And that's the thing is, so I've kept all the iterations. That way we can kind of look at where we started.
Oh, that's cool.
And then kind of just gone from there. Just because it's like, I mean, it is really cool to look at what was there. Like, if you look at the first version, the sleeping arrangements were actually up top. Well, that was actually changed. So that way we have all this space for people to have like personal storage, make it more like a kind of like a passenger liner is now, where you have like the storage overhead, you have the seating and stuff like that. And just we were looking at tons of different airplanes that are being used today, And then looking at the Hindenburg, looking at different things like the trains, cruise liners, kind of everything, getting inspiration from that.
Yeah, what was the main inspiration for the Starliner? Or your version
I
of it?
think, well, I mean, my version has always been looking at like I think someone told me that it was like the ship from, oh my God, I'm blanking on the name of the thing, but it was like Fifth Element, how it had that like cruise liner feel,
gotcha,
and
yeah.
that one thing that people would just go in sleep pods and all that mess and just pass out. Well, we kind of mixed that with kind of today's version of the present. So passengers are going to be sitting in their seats for a bit. If they want to get up and walk around, they can go to their sleep pod, take a nap, hang out, chill. So yeah, like we've added extra airlocks for things. We've added more safety features, and like right here, we're seeing kind of the things will be actually people sit down, and then like the seats will launch up into the vacuum. Like this is all just work in progress. So right now, it's all still very conceptual, and we're still figuring everything out. So once we figure everything out, then we can go from there. Like I even added in like storage stations so people can actually work the ships. We actually added a kitchen. We added a mess and lounge area. We've added in like a lounge up here so people can have like an observation deck. We were thinking about, opening it up right here so that way it has people can actually look at it, and then people can actually see things like where they can see the stars as they're traveling. They can sit back, read a book, like just going more for that simulation, right? And then kind of just feeding into that. So yeah, added more bathrooms, added more causeways so people can actually walk around. And again, this is all white
bathrooms.
box.
All right.
Yeah,
I'm all about
more bathrooms. We need more bathrooms.
What type of differences in the types of Genesis Starliners are you looking at?
So we're looking at multiple variants right now, and right now this is the mixed one. So it does a dual class system, kind of like it has first class, it has economy, and then the other one. Actually, let's see if I don't get in trouble too much, but let's see if we can look at some of the other variants real quick.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
Let's go look at some of the luxury stuff happening. All right, so let me show you the first version of luxury, and then we'll move back over to this one real quick. So this one right here, the luxury version actually was nothing but a few seats up here, and then the sleeping arrangements were down here where they were like full staterooms. Like if you were to like kind of rent out a full portion of the train, or like a cruise liner type thing, so it's more like a suite. And so tons of space. Everyone has their own private bathrooms and stuff like that, their own storage, own private storage space. But there wasn't much storage space actually for people to actually like bring vehicles and stuff like that. Like the Starliner is massive. It's really, really big. It's bigger than the Constellation.
Oh wow.
So it is something that people could fit vehicles on. It's something that people could fit. Even an M50 or something like that could probably go in there for storage wise. You can't like, drop from it like a drop ship or whatever, but you can at least fit stuff in there. So if you have, if you purchase some of the other toys that would be coming up and designing, then you can fit them in the ship.
That's awesome.
It's definitely good enough space. But yeah, this, like the first edition, I had like a bar down here for lounging. Then I had like another bar for other lounge up here. So it was like two things. I had a business meeting just in case. So I was kind of trying to go a mix of like almost Air Force One / that luxury like private plane.
Like luxury for like a business
kind of, yeah.
Gotcha.
So like I was going with that, and then feedback they were like, all right, remove a few things, change this. So the version that we're ended up with right now, and there's gonna be more iterations as more feedback comes through, because we know what we want to do with the ship, but once the community always gets their hands on things, they're gonna do what they want. So we want to make sure that we're creating things that they can play around with everything that they need, they want to do, right? I mean, this game is ultimately about them. And we're trying to give them toys that they can play with and stuff. So this one right here, as you see, I've added the kitchen and the dining room. I've added in the lounge up here. And then I have a spa type of thing up here.
Nice.
So that way we can have the space jacuzzi.
No, dude, I've always wanted a space jacuzzi.
I mean, who doesn't want a space
Right?
jacuzzi, right? I mean, I know I want a space
I was
jacuzzi.
3 years old and I said I want a space jacuzzi.
I can see that.
Right?
I can see that,
You
yeah.
got it.
I've also added a different type of lounge that had like sofas and like comfortable chairs, as well as like little meeting spots so people can just meet up, little tables here and there so people can play cards or something like that. So that way they can entertain themselves. And then of course more bathrooms still.
You gotta have those bathrooms. You're really proud of these bathrooms, I can tell.
You gotta, say you're in space for a long time, you gotta go. The first class area kind of stayed similar to the mixed one, and then the staterooms, has been reduced also the number of staterooms, but the space there is still there. So, and then we have now actual storage space, so we can actually put vehicles and everything, and they could go up like the ramp right here, just like loading and everything.
Interesting.
I've also added in the elevator to go to all 3 floors, so that way they can go here. They have causeways on the sides, and then they have causeways up here. And
After
then
that Mass Effect elevator, right?
I don't know, man. I kind of liked it, you know. 'cause
Yeah, I
you had
guess so
time
it
to
was.
relax and
Yeah.
chill and stuff. You know,
be
it
angry.
gets you ready for that next portion.
Mass Effect shade. Sorry to interrupt.
We have another elevator up here for the crew, so that way the crew can get in and out and stuff, and
Yeah.
EVA. So we've also increased the crew size here. So originally the crew size is going to be around like 4 people, right? But with a ship this big, we need like people stewards, mechanic, we need like co-pilots, we need a captain, we need a gunner. So I mean, hopefully like a chef or something like that. Like once all the professions on, I don't really know what P is going to be doing, but we're giving, again, those options are there for when we want to do things.
Nice.
So yeah, but this is a luxury version, and I think I have.
Let's say I mean, I like luxury. But let's say we want a little more power.
Okay.
What do you got for me?
Let's see. Let's check it out real quick. Let me switch over. Let me go ahead and show you the troop variant. So, troop variant's gonna be a little more heavy than armored, probably. Probably a little bit bigger guns, but for the most part, it's still all about passengers. It's all about, you know, cruising and stuff. So, the first iteration, I actually did like a old school briefing room from like anytime you see like a military movie or whatever, they have these like the tiered seatings and stuff from like Battlestar Galactica. They had the those rooms and stuff. So they were like had the tiered seating that people can just come in, pile in, and of course, you know, if you're the last one to the meeting, then you're coming through the elevator here, or you're coming through here in front, so everybody sees you.
Yeah.
Just you gotta have hazing. It's military, right? Like even a hologram display right here, so when people are going, it can display to everything. We have like a little meeting room, so if you get called into this office, probably not detention, but
Yeah.
you know,
Not
sleep
good.
quarters are, since it's troops, we have a bunch of sleep quarters, so they're right up here and right next to the mess hall and the kitchen.
They're just normal racks.
Normal racks they can jump in, depending on how many troops they want to fit in. They can hot bunk if they need to. So, you know what hot bunking is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We have the seats rearranged differently, just because it'd be easier for the soldiers to line in and out for the different things, and they can go in and out of the airlocks right here if they need it. And there's 2. They have storage for their rucksacks and weapons up top, and then they have ways that they can go down. So the Constellation, again, I did some more inspiration off that. So if you wanted to load up vehicles or personnel, you can actually drop them down with the causeways, and then these things will drop down. So like when they land on a planet or something like that, these things can come down. You can load gear and load gear off.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
So I've also moved all the sleeping quarters for the crew down here into the compartments. That way, this is like where all the main things are, like the engines, the shield generators, and the thing about Starliner is always about safety and redundancy. So they always have a lot of redundant systems. So if one part of the ship gets damaged, another system can kick in. So it's all about just that safety, and that makes sure that it can keep on going.
Okay.
You know. As you can see here, the bridge is built up a little bit more. I added some consoles. I added like a hologram table right here for planning. I added some comm stations, kind of like in the sub movies and stuff.
Yeah.
Some servers back here, so that way they can go through everything needed. Gun racks, and then so one of the feedback I got was actually like, you know, we need more gun racks. We need like an armory. We need a bunch of other things. So I'm gonna show you the last iteration that I've been kind of playing with lately. As you can see here, more storage for vehicles can pop in, like, I mean, dune buggies or whatever else. We still have
Dune
these
buggies
things
can
right here. Yeah. Don't say that out loud. Oh shit, we just did.
Said the S.
It's
all right.
My bad.
Someone will bleep it out. We'll be good.
Nice. So yeah, I was actually looking at, I got feedback for an armory, whether we have any type of suits for people to jump into or wear. They can come down here, refit, and we're going to be removing one of these things. So that way over here, we still have the loading and unloading will go off. And then this will be another area right here where they can load in and load out vehicles. The mess hall's still there, the kitchen's still there. Now I added a kind of a really quick med bay.
That day, yeah.
We still have this office over here, probably be used for anything like people can talk and chill, hang out there. Little fitness center right here, people can do on long travels.
Gotta work out.
Yep, got to.
Gotta lift.
Elevator still moves to the side. I increased the amount of space so that way people can actually have space to move in and out. So 2 people can come in and out of here. And then sleep racks are about the same. I've actually moved the seating around a little bit more so we have more space in between to move around. And we're not going to put gun racks in between here. So when soldiers kind of sit down, they'd basically stow the gear.
Yeah.
And then they're able to put their ruts up top, stow their weapons right in front of them. So in case anything happens, they need EVA or anything like that, then they can go ahead and grab their stuff real quick, grab their weapon, and then head out the door.
Cool.
So it's all about just trying to make it more, just easier for them to go through things. But we've also added in ladders so that way soldiers can just get in and out real quick. We have 2 on this side, we have 3 on this side, and another one over here in case you need to get to a different compartment. The crew stuff has stayed about the same for right now, and then right now I'm just waiting for feedback from, some directors, from other designers and stuff, and then, Chris Roberts has had his eye on this ship as well and giving feedback here and there. So it's been really interesting.
Okay, so that was the very, very old concept video, but it does allow us to get an insight onto the deck layout. As you can see, the extremities in the external side of the ship didn't change much, but I paused it here because I want to talk about this a bit more. If this is the military variant that we're looking at right now. So this appears to be some sort of control room, which I imagine for the AWACS variant, if they do it, oh god, I hope they do it. This is the kind of control room I had in mind. Now, I tried to think with my mind's brain what this would look like when CRG modernized this ship, because they definitely, the internals are 100% going to change and be brought up to standard, I can promise you that. So I tried to think of another ship that was similar in that sort of seating layout, and it brought me to the RSI Arastra concept of how I would expect the command module of the Genesis to potentially look, because we know they can do it. They've pre-designed it with the Arastra, which is a fantastic mining ship. Can't wait for that to come out. Chuck it on the pile of all the other concept ships that I really want that don't have yet. I think it'd be very similar to this, and this looks very command orientated, except for this is just on a mining ship, and it just so happens that the seating arrangement is kind of reminiscent of a modern AWACS today, right? If you've seen a modern AWACS, it's quite similar how they're sat next to each other with all the various systems, etc. I imagine this is kind of what it would look like. So what we need to do now is to get a flavor for the Crusader design language, and using this image we're going to have to use our imagination here a little bit. So let's take a look at what a modern Crusader ship looks like and try and apply it to what I imagine the Genesis will end up looking like. So here we have the great Crusader Mercury Starliner. Now I picked the Starliner because I think it's a bit more flamboyant than the Hercules. Okay, the Hercules is very much a workhorse kind of ship. I think this Crusader Starliner is a bit more flavoursome with how it looks internally, and this is the kind of design language and internal layout that I would expect to see on the Genesis. So if we combine the seating arrangement from the Arastra with the internal look of the Crusader ships, I think that's kind of what we'll get. I imagine the internals are going to be modelled more to this sort of Starliner kind of caliber of modelling, because it's Crusader, so they have to bring it up to speed. Now I'm 99.9% sure most of the Crusader Genesis inside is going to get ripped apart and redone, brought up to these standards that we're used to with Crusader. I maintain I think the Starliner has one of the best cockpits in terms of how it looks and how it feels, and the immersion the Starliner gives you I think is fantastic. Whether or not the Genesis uses a yoke, I think it definitely should use a yoke for the passenger side of things. In fact, for all variants, I'd like to see it using a yoke. It just fits that sort of cosmetic vibe that the Genesis uses, right? And it'd be more in line with what airline passengers use of today. But that's the kind of design language I expect to see. So if they do that, I think the Genesis will be super, super cool. And as you can see, it's a very generous ship in terms of size. I think it's only roughly 80 meters long. And the troop transport variant as well would be super useful for especially the large orgs, moving people around in one ship with multiple passenger seats for your troops and their stowage and things of that nature. Large orgs are going to want a Genesis, maybe a troop transport with vehicles plus an AWACS. It's going to be a force to be reckoned with. I really do think the Starliner is going to be great. Okay, let's move on.
Hello, and thank you for flying with Meridian Transit today. We'll be heading underway to Cassell in just a few minutes, so strap in and make yourselves comfortable. We're going to ask that you remain seated until I turn off the seatbelt sign. Also, my co-pilot here just checked the weather for you on Lyre, and I'm happy to tell you that it is expected to be yet another beautiful day.
Okay, the Crusader Genesis, a ship that I foolishly dismissed as just being, it's just a passenger ship. I don't really see why I would need one, from going to, oh my god, the potential of this ship, the versatility, the flexibility, the utilitarian side of it, the passenger side of it, the space trucking, except for the cargo are NPC cattle. Really changed my outlook on the ship. It really intrigued me. I look forward to it. It's not going to be anytime soon. We know this. I think potentially there's a lot that CIG can unpack with ships of this nature, and I think the Genesis will be a good starting point if they implement some of the things I mentioned, like the pilot licenses, manually landing the spacecraft correctly on an actual runway, you know, give it wheels, maybe give a variant with wheels or change it. Who knows what they're going to do? It will have to change internally. There's no doubt in my mind that they will have to rip it out and possibly rework it. I do not want them to change too much externally. I think it looks great. Like I said, the only issue I have on the externals of the Genesis is I think that front is a little bit too close to the sun regarding how it looks in terms of its competitor company, you know, MISC. I think it's too misky. It needs some softer edges at the front, maybe give it a nice sort of nose to it, you know, a nice rounded Crusader nose or something like that. And then I think what you could have there is a beautiful ship. And even if they leave it as is, I'd still be happy with it. I don't dislike it. It's just my thought is that at some point, I imagine they're going to change that. So if you already own the concept and you like the look, I kind of understand if you'd be a little bit upset, kind of like they did with the Merchantman. But we'll see. It's very much a wait and see sort of scenario. So it looks fantastic. It's modular. There's different variants. Potentially other companies are going to use these, so there could be numerous paint schemes reflecting which company they work for. Hopefully the reputation system comes into play. Am I going to pick one up? We'll see. This is very much a wait and see for me. If it turns out to be a joy to fly, and it turns out that the pilot reputation system is a thing and everything comes together, I think I could see myself doing that long haul from system right through to another system and then beyond to turn bloody Buzz Lightyear. You know, I think I would enjoy that because recently, as I said in my Odyssey video, I'm just not interested in combat anymore, to be honest. I mean, how many games do I have to play that are constantly combat? I mean, it's everywhere, right? And I just like Star Citizen to just go chill, enjoy the verse, enjoy the ships, enjoy the industrial side of the verse, you know, it's nice. So the question is, what do you guys think about the Crusader Genesis? Do you like the looks as it is now? Do you expect them to change it? How are you going to use yours? Are you going to get one? What would you do with the Genesis? Are you a Microsoft flight simmer? Are you a DCS flight simmer? What would you like to see implemented? I'm genuinely interested to hear from you guys. And that is my video on the Crusader Genesis. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you know what buttons to press, and I of course will have more Star Citizen content en route to your location very soon. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care and cheers.